Yeah, when it comes to development, I wouldn't say unprecedented because the city has gone through amazing growth, half a century ago, a century ago. But I mean, it's been stunning the changes that have occurred in this city over the past decade. New York has been completely transformed, and what's been amazing to me is that the building and development that's occurred has occurred all throughout the five boroughs. That may be somewhat unprecedented in recent years, particularly when it comes to residential development. We've seen what were previously considered the fringes of the city, neighborhoods from Harlem to eastern Queens to the Rockaways, has seen incredible development and I think changed this city probably forever. I don't think there's been a monumental jump in terms of architectural quality. I think there's such an interest among international architects in New York because the city's been clicking on so many levels. It's hip again. It's where people want to be, and I'm glad that we have some of these renowned architects here, and I think that their work has contributed greatly to the city's growth, and that's a great thing. But I think that there's been so much building here, and so much of it has been average and bland. So we have had some really great buildings that have come out of the last decade, but on the whole, I would say that it hasn't been incredibly spectacular. I think that more of the development that's occurred has been on the mediocre level than on the superior level. I don't know how to, I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because so much of the development is residential, and there's not a lot of profit margin there where developers are going to take a chance. A lot of the development also has occurred outside of Manhattan, and maybe there's not as much of a kind of a premium that developers can charge for fine architecture in those places. Already, the costs are very high in New York. Maybe it's that there hasn't been as much office development in the last decade. There's been very little office development, and traditionally, at least half a century ago, that's where you saw really fine architecture. I think that changed in the 80s, where you had a lot of just boxes that went up around the city, so we could do better than that. But when I think about what's happened in the World Trade Center, I think that a lot of New Yorkers feel like we could have gotten something kind of more magnificent out of what's been designed there. Well, I think that when it comes to the rezonings, I think clearly that's opened up areas for development, and the number of zonings that's occurred in the city has been astonishing. But it really was kind of that territory where it was kind of the uncharted frontier. And so whether you agree or disagree with the rezonings, it really did open up territory for development in the city. I think the rezoning of the Far West Side, for instance, is going to have far-reaching consequences on the city for years to come. This is a whole neighborhood that I think we don't, at this point, even know exactly how it's going to look. But the rezoning itself, rather than just bringing a sports stadium or something there, it's the rezoning that's going to open that up to all sorts of development. So I think the rezonings is going to have a lasting impact on the city's architectural footprint, on the skyline. But as far as other things, I'm less clear on them. I think that their commitment to expanding open space has been a good thing. I think that's led to development in a lot of parts of the city. Their continued ability to kind of lower the crime rate in New York City has probably had the greatest impact of any on development in this city. It's opened up parts of the city to development and construction that, if crime was still high, wouldn't have been occurring. As far as the specific rules, though, except for the rezonings, I'm not really sure how other things that have had much of an impact. I think as far as the downside, and it kind of, let me go back a little bit to your question from before. I think that there's been a ton of development around the city that is actually downright ugly, shoddy, and it has led to incredibly bad feelings about development around the city. Much of this kind of shoddy development has taken place in the outer boroughs in places like Staten Island, eastern Queens, southeastern Brooklyn, and people feel like that these, mostly townhouses, single-family houses have gone up without really any kind of oversight. They kind of snuck in under zoning or building codes with very little oversight. And they've really kind of ruined a lot of nicer middle-class neighborhoods in New York City, and they've gone up without the infrastructure to support this additional development. So they're taxing the sewers, they're taxing the parking structures that are available in some of these neighborhoods, and so that's definitely a downside to the development that's occurred that a lot of people don't hear about. But if you go outside to these neighborhoods on the fringes of the boroughs, there's a real anti-development feeling today because they feel like all of this development has really led to a less attractive neighborhood, and it's also led to kind of overtax on the infrastructure. I think it needs to continue to attract and retain talent. I think more and more going forward, cities are all about human capital. The cities that attract and retain the best, the most creative, the most talented people are going to succeed in the future. So I think that to the extent that the city can continue to make itself attractive in a number of ways, but also affordable. So I think going forward, the city's got to be more affordable on so many levels. It's a place where young people, but particularly people that have hit their 30s, can't afford to live here anymore when they're at the point where maybe they want to have some kids or grow into a larger place. I think that's one thing that the city's going to have to tackle if the city's going to continue to grow. Let's see. Secondly, I think that we have to have a more supportive environment for small businesses to grow. The only way New York's going to continue to grow in population is we have to have more jobs. And I think that those jobs are going to be created by small growing businesses. But right now there's very slim profit margins for small businesses. It's one of the highest places in the world for costs for businesses. And so I think the city's going to really have to look at how do we grow our economy and how do we support the businesses with growth potential. I think it's an overall very positive period for the city. I mean, on so many levels, New York has been clicking. It's been a time where college students from all around the country want to move to New York. People that are here want to stay. We did a study looking at the challenges facing New York's middle class, and one of the things that's changed in the last 10 or 15 years is that 15 years ago, people that were moving out of New York were doing so because it was unsafe or it was dirty, and they wanted to get away. Today, people want to be here; they just have to leave because they can't afford it. But the fact is that people do want to stay here. They want to live here, and that's an enormously positive thing. And the changes that have occurred in the last 10 or 15 years are a big part of that. And all of that positive feeling has led to growth. It's led to development all around the city. And I think that this development, while some of it's been bad or unplanned, I think it's going to actually help the city grow in the future. The fact that neighborhoods outside of Manhattan and let's say north of 96th Street in the city have developed. There's a lot more amenities in those neighborhoods now. The growth of population, the growth of prosperity in some of these areas have led to new retail stores. It's led to slightly better transportation in these areas. And so, I think going forward, as people move to the city, much more of the 5 boroughs is now kind of open to them. It's no longer just like, Manhattan south of 96th Street that people are considering. It's much more the entire city that we now have to play with. And I think that's a good thing.